98 bodies. That is the number they counted in front of the machine gun when it was over. 98 enemy soldiers, arranged in a rough crescent across the jungle floor, all facing the same direction, toward the gun and toward the man behind it. The man was a dentist. His name was Captain Ben L. Salomon, and when they found him slumped over the weapon on the morning of July 8, 1944, his body carried 76 wounds. 24 of those wounds were in the front of his body. The rest were in his back, his arms, his legs, wounds he had taken and ignored, wounds that should have killed him long before the last one did. He was 31 years old. He had been a dentist for 4 years. He had never wanted to be a soldier. This is the story of how a man who filled cavities for a living became the last line of defense for 30 wounded men on an island called Saipan, and why it took 58 years for anyone to officially say thank you. Ben Salomon was born on the 2nd of September, 1914, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His parents were Jewish immigrants. His father worked in a factory. His mother kept the house and kept the family moving forward in the way that immigrant families do, one generation's labor becoming the next generation's education. Ben was a good student. He was quiet, careful, the kind of young man who paid attention to details. He went to Marquette University, then to the University of Southern California, where he earned his dental degree in 1937. He opened a practice in Los Angeles. He was, by all accounts, a competent and well-liked dentist. He played poker on Thursday nights. He drove a Chevrolet. He was, in every measurable way, an ordinary man living an ordinary life. Then the draft notice arrived. In 1940, Ben Salomon was inducted into the United States Army as a private. Not as a dental officer, as a private. An infantryman. He carried a rifle through basic training, slept in a barracks, ate mess hall food, and marched in formation with men half a decade younger than him. It was a bureaucratic accident. The Army had drafted him before his dental commission paperwork was processed. By the time the error was sorted out, Salomon had already spent several months as a line soldier. He had learned to shoot. He had learned to dig a foxhole. He had learned, as every infantryman does, the particular mathematics of survival under fire, where to stand, where not to stand, how to read the sound of an incoming round. These were skills a dentist would never need. Until the morning they were the only skills that mattered. He was eventually reassigned as a dental officer and commissioned as a first lieutenant. By 1943, he was Captain Ben Salomon, Regimental Dental Officer of the 105th Infantry Regiment, 27th Infantry Division. He set up his dental chair wherever the regiment went, in tents, in converted buildings, once in the back of a truck. He pulled teeth. He filled cavities. He treated trench mouth and broken jaws. He was a dentist at war, which meant he was a dentist who happened to live near a war. That changed on the 15th of June, 1944, when the 27th Division landed on Saipan. Saipan is a small island in the Mariana Chain, roughly 12 miles long and 5 miles wide. In the summer of 1944, it was one of the most important pieces of real estate in the Pacific. The Japanese had fortified it heavily. Taking it would give American bombers a base within striking distance of the Japanese home islands. The invasion was brutal from the first hour. The 27th Division came ashore on the western beaches and pushed inland through sugarcane fields, rocky ridgelines, and a network of caves and tunnels that the Japanese defenders used with lethal efficiency. Casualties were heavy. The fighting was close, sometimes measured in yards, sometimes in feet. Captain Salomon set up his aid station in a tent behind the front lines. He worked on wounded men around the clock, extracting shrapnel, cleaning wounds, administering morphine, doing the grim triage that combat medicine demands. He was a dentist doing a surgeon's work because there were not enough surgeons. He was good at it. His hands were steady. His training in oral surgery, the same training that had taught him to extract a molar without flinching, translated, in ways no one had planned, to the work of keeping men alive under fire. By early July, the American forces had pushed the Japanese into the northern tip of the island. The defenders were running out of food, ammunition, and options. The Japanese commander, Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito, knew the end was near. On the night of July 6th, he issued his final order. Every man who could stand was to attack. It would be a gyokusai, a final, glorious charge. No retreat. No surrender. Death with honor. The attack came before dawn on July 7, 1944. Estimates vary, but somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000 Japanese soldiers, armed with rifles, bayonets, swords, grenades, and in some cases sharpened sticks, charged into the American lines along a front less than a mile wide. It was the largest banzai charge of the Pacific War. The first units to be hit were from the 105th Infantry Regiment, Ben Salomon's regiment. The sheer mass of the charge overwhelmed the forward positions within minutes. The line did not bend. It broke. Japanese soldiers poured through the gaps, past the foxholes, past the dead and dying, heading straight for the rear areas, where the aid stations were. Ben Salomon was operating on a wounded soldier when the first Japanese soldier came through the tent flap. The accounts of what happened next are reconstructed from the testimony of the few men who survived. The sequence is fragmented. The details are incomplete. But the core of it is this. A Japanese soldier entered the tent with a bayonet. Salomon killed him. More soldiers came. Salomon grabbed a rifle from a wounded man and fought them back. He ordered the wounded who could walk to start moving, away from the aid station, toward the rear, toward any position that was still held. He was not supposed to fight. The Geneva Convention is explicit on this point. Medical personnel are non-combatants. They wear the Red Cross. They do not carry weapons in combat. They are protected, and in return they do not fight. Salomon knew this. Every medical officer in the army knew this. But the Geneva Convention was written for a war in which both sides honored it. In the jungle of Saipan, at 4 in the morning, with wounded men on stretchers and enemy soldiers coming through the walls of the tent, the Geneva Convention was a piece of paper in a filing cabinet on a different continent. Salomon made his choice. He found a machine gun. Accounts differ on exactly how. One version says he pulled it from a destroyed position, another says he took it from a dead gunner. The gun was a water-cooled .30 caliber, the standard heavy machine gun of the American infantry. He set it up at the perimeter of the aid station. He told the remaining wounded to go. He stayed. What happened over the next minutes? An hour? No one knows exactly how long, is reconstructed from the physical evidence found afterward. Salomon fired the machine gun into the advancing Japanese. He was hit. He kept firing. He was hit again. He replaced the barrel of the gun when it overheated, a procedure that requires removing a scalding hot metal tube and replacing it with a spare, a task that requires both hands, clear thinking, and the kind of calm that has no business existing in the middle of a banzai charge. He replaced the barrel at least once, possibly twice. He was wounded repeatedly. He kept firing. The men he was covering, the wounded, the medics, the walking casualties, made it out. They reached positions that were still held. They survived. Ben Salomon did not. When American forces retook the position later that day, they found him slumped over the machine gun. The barrel was burned out. The ammunition was spent. In front of his position, in a rough arc that told its own story, lay 98 enemy dead. His body had 76 wounds. The medical examination that followed noted, with clinical precision, that 24 of those wounds were in the front of his body. He had been facing the enemy when he died. He had not turned away. The men who survived recommended him for the Medal of Honor. The recommendation was submitted through channels, endorsed by his commanding officers, supported by eyewitness accounts. It was denied. The reason was the Geneva Convention. Medical personnel are non-combatants. By picking up a weapon, Salomon had technically violated the law of war. The Army's position was that awarding the Medal of Honor for an act that was, by strict legal definition, a violation of international law would set a precedent it did not wish to set. The recommendation was resubmitted. It was denied again, and again, and again. Over the next 5 decades, supporters of Salomon, fellow veterans, historians, members of Congress, submitted the paperwork 7 times. 7 times the bureaucracy said no. The arguments against the award were always technical, always legal, always correct in the narrowest possible reading of the rules. And always, to the men who had been carried out of that aid station on Saipan while a dentist with a machine gun bought them time with his life, utterly beside the point. The world moved on. The Korean War came and went. Vietnam came and went. The Cold War ended. The men who had been young on Saipan became old men, and some of them died, and the story of the dentist with the machine gun became a footnote in regimental histories that fewer and fewer people read. On the 1st of May, 2002, 58 years after Ben Salomon died on Saipan, President George W. Bush signed the order awarding him the Medal of Honor. The ceremony was held at the Pentagon. His surviving family members were present. The citation was read aloud. It said what the men on Saipan had been saying since 1944, that Captain Ben L. Salomon, by his extraordinary heroism and devotion to duty, had saved the lives of his comrades at the cost of his own. He had no children. He had no wife. He had a dental practice in Los Angeles that he left behind in 1940 and never returned to. He had a Chevrolet that someone must have sold. He had a poker game on Thursday nights that went on without him. He was a dentist. He was a soldier by accident. He was a hero by necessity. And for 58 years, the country he died for could not decide whether what he did was courage or a violation, could not reconcile the simple human act of standing between the helpless and the harm with the tidy categories of a legal framework written for a tidier war. The men he saved never had that confusion. To them, it was always simple. A man stood up. He told them to go. He stayed behind. And he held the line until there was nothing left to hold it with. If this story moved you, subscribe to follow the Untold Front. New stories every week.